All right. So this is the image I just created. So I took my script, what I've been working on for this keynote, and I put it into SDS and I asked it to create an infographic. It's not bad. I gave it our brand colors. The yellow is a little off, but it's pretty close. This is what it did before with before I gave brand colors, and I changed the prompt to say just the title of the sections, not all this. This is too much information, and obviously I can keep refining it, but not bad. Okay, all right. So um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, and it picks up, I think, pretty well, not surprisingly, with some of the topics, some of the things we've been discussing already within the hackathon itself. So just to jump in, I wanted to share that last week I was on a call with someone who's really spent decades advising some of the largest companies around the world on growth. And what he laid out for me was a thesis that he had, it's been called the organizational singularity. And what this means, as I came to learn, is AI agents, he said, will soon handle both strategy and execution. So existing companies, this is a point I want to make too from our previous conversation, existing companies will rebuild themselves from their current, say 10 or 20,000 to maybe 10 or 20,000 times, or 10 or 20 times fewer employees. So what he was saying was that the traditional firm will dematerialize. And in this model, humans get moved to the edges. So what
Hmm.
this became clear was that we become what I'll call the exception handlers. We make sure that machines didn't do something obviously wrong, and then we basically just step aside. And he said all of this with really with complete confidence, like the way you describe the weather or something. It's just what's coming, what's coming. And when I got off the phone with him, I sat with something I really couldn't immediately name. It wasn't disagreement because I mean the technology is advancing. Obviously, it's fast, and it wasn't necessarily fear exactly. Although I'm not looking forward to that if this is our future, but it was really what came in the way it was described to me, and I had the feeling that you get when someone describes your house in perfect detail, but never mentions that there are people living in it. Or I hear people talk about the economy as if humans aren't in charge of it or impacted by what happens. Um, so I want to share that there are a lot of people like him that are extremely confident about what the future looks like. And I'm not one of them. I mean, no one really knows. This is just another perspective, which is another important context of this talk. But I do think that we're asking the wrong question. We keep asking, what will AI do to us? And I think the real question is, what are we going to do now that AI has made it impossible to avoid one of the biggest questions of our time? So here's what's happening. Over the last year, tens of thousands of layoffs have been linked now to AI driven restructuring, where AI has been explicitly cited as a factor. Now, we figured this was coming, but now we're starting to get some of the data. The World Economic Forum now warns of a crisis of occupational identity. As AI reshapes our work, we're starting to face this new kind of crisis, and it's what they call it an occupational identity. Because when people lose their work, they don't just lose their income, right? They lose their place in the world. And this pointed to something to me. It's like our work and identity is connected to the structure, our economy, and a sense of who we are. And this tells us something, you know, basically for a long time, we've been defining intelligence in a way that this surfaced for me um, to, by extension, our worth very narrowly. And what I mean by that is that logic, data, pattern recognition, and optimization is what I feel like basically our education system has been training us to think this way. So we've been going through school, and the way that we're tested in our ability is how well we take tests. It's not on our creativity. It's not on our intrinsic value. This is something we've known for a long time. And I feel like we've carried that definition into our working lives. Like, I am what I know and what I produce, because we decided that's what we could measure. Like, the more and more I got involved in business and, saw what's important and what we're doing, what we're producing, it's like, you measure what matters. And what we're doing is making companies more profitable, and that's what mattered. That's what we measured. But now, and this is the uncomfortable truth, is that computers do that better than us, right? So naturally, we're in that kind of crisis. And I'll go into the very specifics of this, but this is where AI shines. So if intelligence is logic, as we've defined it in the past, and machines do logic better, like, where do we stand? And, what are we actually for? And this question lands at a moment when I think everything else is feeling extremely unstable too. Like, society is getting noisier, it's more polarized, it's harder to trust. It's, definitely the ground is shifting underneath our feet. But here's the thing, like, I feel like that question has been there all along. We just didn't have to face it. But now it's urgent. And I believe the answer, what human intelligence actually is far bigger than what we've been told. We forgot something long before, and I think it's time to revisit it. So I want to present a bit of a reframe. So thanks to Gary Boomer, who introduced a lot of us to a book called Primal Intelligence, comes from a professor at Ohio State named Angus Fletcher. And he runs something called the Project Narrative. And his lab made claim that got the attention of the US Army Special Operations, that there is a form of human intelligence older than logic, more powerful in uncertain conditions, and fundamentally different from how computers process information. So it's different enough that today's AI can imitate some of its outputs in language, but it doesn't truly possess it. And so Fletcher's team worked on the Army with training aimed at improving adaptive thinking under pressure. The Army is a perfect place for this. So the training produced measurable improvements in creative problem solving and strategic initiative. And Fletcher received a commendation medal tied to that research. But what he argues is this: we've been training ourselves to think like computers, logic, data, deduction, but our brains actually have two kinds of intelligence, not one. And the first is, he makes a compelling argument in a story about how it was evolved first to help us find food. So A equals B. It's pattern recognition and then optimization. So this is what AI does brilliantly. A equals B, you detect a pattern, match the data, optimize the outcome. So what we've been doing at work for the last 40, 50 years. The second evolved for something completely different, to keep us alive in situations where there was no pattern to follow. At his point, to survive, our ancestors didn't need more data. They needed to act creatively under uncertainty, to do something surprising and purposeful and new. And the way he described it was that if you were prey being chased by a predator, you needed to do something surprising. You needed to adapt and do something that was not expected. Otherwise, you'd be eaten. So not randomly, with intention and adaptability. So A leads to B, cause leads to effect, one action opens to the next. And this second intelligence is the root of our four capacities that make us distinctly human. So just to go through each one of those, which is important, I think, for the work that we're doing here, and I'll make the clear connection in a minute. So intuition. So Fletcher defined this specifically, not like a vague gut feeling, as I always kind of thought about it, but it's more the ability to detect exceptions. So the thing that breaks the pattern, that anomaly that doesn't fit into the existing rules. In his research, the people who improved most weren't the ones who memorized the right frameworks. They were the ones who noticed something strange, something that didn't belong. And their brains used that exception to discover a new rule that had never been seen before. So AI is exceptional, or it's extraordinary at finding patterns, but intuition finds what the patterns miss. And then there's imagination. This is the ability to create futures that don't exist yet, not by recombining like what's already in the data. AI does that, but by asking what if in a way that leads to genuinely new possibilities. And so you can think about this as the way, scientists hypothesize, how leaders see around corners, how entrepreneurs sense opportunities no one else can see yet. We notice something different. We imagine what can happen that we can do with this exception. Then comes emotion. And emotion is not a rationality to be corrected, but an intelligence, as he describes it, on its own. And this is the ability to feel what matters, to sense when something is off before you can explain why. Our emotional intelligence evolved because it kept us alive. It reads situations faster and more subtly than our conscious analysis ever could. And last is common sense, the ability to decide wisely when the data is thin, fragile, or simply absent. It describes most of real life, right? Most of the decisions that actually matter, who to trust, what to build, when to change course, that happens. A lot of this happens without enough data. Common sense is what we use when basically we're out of information, the spreadsheets, then we don't have enough data. We have to rely on our common sense. So why does this matter so much now in my mind? Like, I believe that these capacities work because they're grounded in us. And he makes the point, the distinction between AI and human beings is that we have something at stake. And intuition works because, like, catching the exception, the thing that breaks the pattern, is how our ancestors stay alive. If we missed that thing that was different, the thing that broke the pattern, the brushes, or the bushes all of a sudden moving, they shouldn't. It's like if we miss that, we get eaten. Where emotion works because our bonds with other people are real. Like we have skin in the game. We can be hurt, we can lose. You love people that we die for, right? So combined with the other two, then with common sense, it works because really you have to live with the results of your decision. Like you don't get to optimize from a distance. Like you're in it. The decision matters because you're in it. AI processes information about consequences, but it doesn't actually experience them. AI could generate 1,000 options, but it has no stake in the one that is chosen. It doesn't care, not because it's broken, but because caring requires a life, a body, a relationship, with actual skin in the game. And Fletcher puts it into a bit sharper focus. Computers excel at pattern matching, A equals B, but human thinking is often causal and directional. A leads to B. And his claim is that today's AI can imitate the outputs in language while missing the lived, embodied why, like what's beneath it, the part connected to stakes, judgment, and consequence. Now, I think we spent decades developing that part of our intelligence that makes that now machines, frankly, do better. And I think that we have, in part, forgot about the part that makes us who we really are. Like even when he first started doing this research, and when he started looking into it, he heard about Ohio State that was doing this research, and they found this other in a whole like part of our intelligence. And he just, like most of us, you hear a claim like that, it's just like, well, you can't believe it. But when you start looking at research and how we've evolved and how the different parts of our brain, how we've evolved, it actually makes a lot of sense. And I believe it's time to reclaim that part of our intelligence, especially when we're starting to work with AI and redefine our part in like our culture and society and where we're headed. So the thinking that matters most, that what I'm putting forward here is that if these capacities, intuition, imagination, emotion, and common sense are real and they're ours and they're different from what AI does, the question becomes like, what do we do with that? I mean, is this just a nice reframe or does it actually change what's possible? And what I'm seeing is that the research says that it actually changes everything. So Harvard and Procter and Gamble recently ran a major field experiment. They with about 800 professionals, they were randomly assigned to different configurations. There was individuals alone, there was traditional teams, there was individuals with AI and teams with AI. An individual working with AI could match the performance of a traditional two-person human team, which is kind of remarkable on its own. But when diverse teams work together with AI, bringing different expertise and different perspectives to the same problem, they were about 3 times more likely to produce a top solution. It wasn't an incremental improvement, it was a standout solution. And researchers at Carnegie Mellon are also finding similar patterns. AI strengthens teams when it acts as a facilitator, not a replacement. So neither humans alone nor AI could produce breakthroughs at that rate. It required both. And it required the humans to be different from each other. So why is this? So AI optimizes brilliantly within the boundaries of its trained data, but the moment conditions change in ways that data didn't predict, the system doesn't slow down and reassess. It keeps optimizing at full speed. And when the game is changing as quickly as it's changing, that game often it no longer exists, right? And it can't detect that the rules have shifted because detecting a rule shift requires noticing an exception, and that's intuition. It requires imagining a different possibility, which is imagination. It requires sensing that something feels wrong before you can prove it, and that's emotion. And I think that this is why human thinking isn't a nice complement to AI. Let's forget the fact that we're here. I feel like I'm talking about the my home without talking about the humans. It's like, why is this important as part of the complement to AI? It's because it's an essential counterbalance. Like without it, you get speed without wisdom. You get optimization without adaptation. Do not give away your judgment. And that kind of thinking, I think, is really like the kind that detects the shifts, imagines new possibilities, feels the stakes, is most powerful when it's collaborative. A single mind holds enough perspective to navigate genuinely, like genuine complexity alone, but we need each other's intuitions. The productive friction of different viewpoints, different eyes on the same problem. And that's the thinking that matters most. It's not a vague aspiration. It's evidence-based conclusion about what actually produces breakthroughs, wise decisions, and the ability to adapt when everything around you is changing. So here's the invitation, and you guys are already all in it. We're already on this journey together because really some of you are part of this almost 3 years ago inside the online community OpenEXO, which is, for those that know, focused on exponential organizations. And when I was a part of that community, I wanted I wanted to gather people together while this major shift was happening with AI. AI was accelerating with the introduction of ChatGPT. It felt like the world was shifting really quickly. And I felt like that, like no one person had enough perspective to navigate it alone. So that community was built from people with different countries, different industries, and different expertise. And what we've done since then is every week we bring together different points of view, still do, news, context, and what we're seeing and doing, and try to figure out what is actually happening to think, build, and do something about it together. And it's designed exactly for this. It's to bring different perspectives and contexts together, figure out what's happening, decide what to do, and make a plan. With AI as a thinking partner, not a replacement for human judgment. Like we've already been doing it, and that's not a consequence. Now, the biggest risk I see right now isn't that AI gets too powerful. It's that we give away our judgment, and that we're handing over more and more our thinking to systems that can't feel the stakes when a decision affects real people. It can't take responsibility for trade-offs, not the way that humans do. When we're forced to choose imperfectly and live with the consequences. So the first thing, the most important thing, is the choice to not do that, to insist that our values, our intuition, our sense of what matters gets built into the tools that we're creating, not bolted on afterward. It's the foundation. And the second thing is to bring more perspectives to the table, not fewer, because the research is clear, and this is where the breakthroughs come from. We have what we need. Like we have the intuition, we have the ability to sense what the data misses. We have our imagination, the ability to envision futures that don't exist yet. Our emotion, the ability to feel what actually matters, and common sense, the ability to act wisely when the path isn't clear. These are not weaknesses to be optimized away. They're powers, they're primal powers in Fletcher's mind, and they're ours. And I think a lot of what's been holding us back is that like we're sensing that something else is possible. There's something we could build, something we could create, but maybe we're hesitating, or we're doubting, or waiting for permission. Maybe it's the fear of the unknown, the rapidly changing landscape, or waiting for a perfect tool, waiting for certainty. And I don't think that we can wait. I don't think there is any certainty, and there never was. But we have something better, the ability to sense a possibility, imagine a way forward, and take the first step together. And that's what these capabilities are for, not for surviving in the wild anymore, for creating the world we actually want to live in, instead of acquiescing to the ones being thrust upon us. So these two questions here that I've put on this slide, like we've been building now for about a day and a half, and we're making real decisions in what we're doing, like what problems to solve, who to work with, what trade-offs to accept, and that's the thing that I think that matters most that's happening here, is that when you go back to building our solutions this afternoon, I want to leave you with these questions, not for the hackathon, but for anything building going forward. So to drill down a little bit on these questions, like what do we need to make better? What decision do we need to make better? So thinking about what it is that we're doing, like it's not about making it faster, or it's about making it better, because in my mind, this includes a structured thinking. Better includes diverse perspectives that are built into the process. Better because someone's values, their sense of what actually matters, has a place in the system, not just the data. When you're designing your product, ask, where does the human need to pause, reflect, and choose wisely? That's really the most important feature, and I think we should build that in. And actually, Brian was already giving this feedback before, saying that it's so easy to just acquiesce to AI, ask AI, what would you do, instead of actually pausing, reflecting, and choosing what is the right path forward. And the second one, whose perspective is missing. So we're seeing that breakthroughs, and we know this intuitively, they come from diverse minds thinking together with AI, not from one person alone with a machine. So look around the Zoom, like who sees the problem differently than you do? Like what assumption are you making that someone else would challenge? The most powerful thing you build this week might not be the cleverest automation. It might be the thing that brings the right perspective and the right questions together that didn't exist before. So I think that the thinking that matters most is already happening here. It's happening every time someone brings their intuition, their imagination, and their willingness to sit on a hard problem alongside with others who see it differently and decides to create something that reflects the world they actually want to live in. And I think that this is what this week is really about. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we create together. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Ben. Really, really appreciate and everyone like keep in mind that Ben has been preparing this presentation all the while also managing all the logistics and everything that is required to make this hackathon a success. So thank you very much for that. Uh, a lot of what Ben is saying, it reminds me like there's a saying I'm sure you've heard many times that says uh, human in the loop. I so hate that expression, human in the loop, because that means that the human is just a cog inside the machine, and it's a machine that's important. And for me, and the way I'm thinking about SDS and what I'm trying to accomplish, and I know there's quite a long road ahead of us, but what we're trying to build is human in control, human in charge, human agency. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. But thank you, Ben. We
Thanks.
have a few comments. Mark, or
Well, first of
questions.
all, Ben, that was really spot on. I think it's so important, as those who have been on the calls know. I've actually written an article which looks at human strengths as opposed to AI, and looks to see how they can be harmonized, which I've done in my software. I largely agree with what you said. There are a few things that I think about decision making that are not in that list. And I think that humans make decisions based on many subjective criteria, often based on the power of language to influence emotions. And, all decisions are made using emotions. And if you don't think that, then I would suggest you might consider it. Um, spoken vi and visual interactions. And on the negative side, humans make decisions based on the past. So they will listen to a new argument or a new concept based on what they already think that is true from the past. And I'm actually a believer that the past does not exist. We only live in the now. And so I think it's very important to actually bring that into the mix. And I like pretty much everything else you had on there, and I had them in my list too. Creativity, um, experience, which governs what happens. We are on the court, seeing how it works rather than AI, which I think is in the stands based on data that it's seen. And there, I won't go. I could share the screen if you like, um, but it's very much on track with what you were saying. And I think it's super important to understand how humans can harmonize with AI so that 1 + 1 = 5 or 6. So I think that I'm very optimistic that if we do that, then we have an amazing future. I'm not sure what happens to the people who don't get it, as I think it was one of the health companies said that, yeah, change the people or change the people. So, it's up to us to actually figure out how we should change to take on this new role. And the great news is that it's only a journey. We don't know what's going to happen yet. We're scratching at the beginning of a new renaissance period in history. But I think the whole point of really understanding what human strengths have and how they can be harmonized with the strengths of AI now and help that to develop too. I can say a lot more. If you like, I can share my screen. Would you like me to do that? Or not, Francis?
I'm sorry, Marco. I we'll try and find other time to explore that deeper. I'm also conscious of the time of the folks at TLM that were supposed to be on 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
I told them already we're gonna take one more question from Rick, and then at 12:45 we will start the Ask Me Anything, which I think Mark might be of interest to you also, but I just
I'm
want to be
sure it will be.
cognizant of their
Anyway,
time
thank you for
and
giving me
their
the
commitment.
time, Francis. Great job, Ben.
Thank you, Mark.
Rick?
Yeah, Ben, I have a series of questions. You won't have time to answer them because I was putting the questions into AI as you were talking. This laid some great groundwork, and I'm going to expand it beyond what we can address here today by looking at how does primal intelligence relate to intuition, deduction, Sophia, et cetera, et cetera. I'll put the link in, and people can, if they want to do a deeper dive into this area, there's a link there. But you don't have to respond to any of these questions because they take too long to answer.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. And by the way, for everyone, what we'll do for the hackathon is the same thing that we do for the AI working group, which means everything from the chat, uh, everything from the transcriptions and the video recording, all of that will be captured and put into a CS board and available for reference and future research and all of that. So thank you very much to all. We Do we need to take I actually need to take a 2 minute break. Maybe more. So let's reconvene in 5 minutes,
Great.
right? So 12:45, we'll reconvene with the Ask Me Anything with two of our panelists from yesterday. And then after that we'll continue with the rest of the agenda for today.
Great.
Congratulations again, Ben. Good job.
Thanks, Francis. I'm going to create a board, I think, for the keynote, and then I'll put those questions from you, Rick, and them, and some of the feedback also, and then we could like use that then as part of context or ways to think about how we apply this perspective with creating new boards or new tools ourselves. So like kind of a place to reference some like about those different kinds of intelligence, and then actually start to brainstorm ideas in terms of how to incorporate them into some of our solutions.
Yeah, Ben, I completely agree with you. And we need to have new learning processes and we can have a deep dive into that conversation because if we're going to get out of our morass of dysfunctional polarizations, we have to elevate our level of thinking. So, and we can use AI to do it as well.
As a
Ben,
companion.
a
Right?
suggestion for you, Ben.
Yeah.
Take your two questions and put it in the same board and try and get people to add answers to your two questions. Because I think you could really get some interesting perspectives from the group here.
Agreed.
Ben, can I ask you a question for you?
Yes, sir.
There's a chart I shared, and I'd just like to get your thought on it. Stories help humans, but stories help AI more than it helps humans. Why do you think that would be the case? And I don't have the answer, by the way.
That's cool. That's a good question for our developers, if they're researchers as well. So I wonder if it's, I mean, it certainly helps us, right? Like, I mean, that's what that book is pointing to, is that really we evolved because of story.
Mhm.
It's also like, I mean, all of those different parts of the intelligence are related to story.
Mhm.
Like, it's like starting to notice what's different, creating emotion, the imagination, emotion, and then like what's possible, creates a great story. Um,
So the thought that comes up for me is actually AI is getting smarter and smarter. And what it really needs is context. When we give it
yeah,
bullet points, it doesn't help it very much. But when
yeah.
you give it context, which is rich, like a story, it actually can build on that better than it can build on, make this or make that. And I don't know. I think it's a fascinating question.
I've noticed it, to that point. I've noticed that when I am having a conversation with an LLM and I give it backstory, like why am I doing this and what my outcome is, I actually tell somewhat of an arc, is like the context. I get a hell of a lot better responses.
Yeah. If you want, you search in the chat once and you'll see a picture I sent over, which I'm sure Gary will like, but it's about the power of stories in creativity.
Yeah, Brian, you made an assertion or assumption earlier about your proposition, and when anybody does that, I always ask, well, how good is the evidence to support the assertion that you made? So,
Yeah, and where did that quote come from that you cited?
Which one? The quote, that diversity is more important than skill?
No, the quote about that stories are better for AI
I've got the facts.
than human. You have
Well,
facts, you have,
No, I have facts for a specific type of activity, which is creativity.
and you think that you provide a story to AI, it will be more creative?
It's
I
amazing.
I can prove it to you.
Well,
fantastic. I'd love to see that
I'd
Uh,
like to see how you go about proving it.
because
Because
there's
uh,
a lot
because
in
actually we have a controlled experiment where AI was given a story and where it was not given a story.
uh-huh.
And so what you have is you have a test and your control. So we have humans with a story, humans without a story,
Hmm.
humans plus AI, and humans plus AI plus a story. Does that
does
make
that,
sense?
yeah, it makes sense. You have,
Not entirely, because you didn't answer the question about how are you evaluating what the answer is. What's it based on? Your past, your opinion, your skepticism?
No, not at all. It's based on experts evaluating ideas. The quality, the number of top ideas per 100.
Oh, that's
I don't know.
fantastic. I'd
I
love
always
to
think
see
the truth is something you make up, so I'm a bit cautious about that.
Well,
it.
that's what he says. It's a story.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
Brian, give us the evidence. Give us the peer review article that supports your assertions. Thank you.
Guys, I'm sorry to be the bad cop here. I know
All
this is
right.
fascinating. I know you guys could continue to argue on these things for the next 72 hours.
At least.